This morning's Breakfast Bible Bite comes from Psalm 75 and 3. We will read commentary about God's plan and the final turn of that plan to separate for himself a purged people with whom he will choose to spend an eternity. Verse 3 of 75 reads, "The earth and all who dwell in it melt. It is I who have firmly set its pillars. Selah." In this commentary, I am continuing along a dispensational line of interpretation if the psalm is indeed prophetic of the return of Christ and pictures the earth just after the Battle of Armageddon at the close of the Great Tribulation. Any perceived governance, rule, or power that would appear to have been in the hands of anarchists will abruptly change as Jesus mounts his throne in Jerusalem. Perhaps Nahum 1, 5 through 7 would be an applicable passage to describe the scene as the righteous judge of all, Christ, takes up his rod of iron, the acceptable scepter of all authority. The mountains quake before him and the hills melt. The earth trembles at his presence. The world and all who live in it. Who can withstand his indignation? Who can endure his burning anger? His wrath is poured out like fire. Even rocks are shattered before him. The Lord is good, a stronghold in a day of distress. He cares for those who take refuge in him. In these uncertain times, Jesus offers stability to societies throughout the earth through uncompromising and virtuous rule. Charles Spurgeon writes, "The earth and all its inhabitants thereof are dissolved. When anarchy is abroad and tyrants are in power, everything is unloosed. Dissolution threatens all things. The intrinsic mountains of government melt as wax, but even then the Lord upholds and sustains the righteous." The 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ is the final turn in God's plan to separate for himself a people with whom he is willing to spend an eternity. Jesus offers rebellious humanity the final option for all people to come to him and to be born anew, receiving in themselves a new nature during this period. From the time Jesus begins to reign in Jerusalem, physical life on this earth will continue for another 1,000 years under his righteous governance. And where the firmly set pillars of justice are righteous and holy, where the unredeemed wicked are without excuse when they finally stand at the appointed time before the final great white throne judgment. We read about this day in Revelation 20, verses 11 through 15. "Then I saw a great white throne, and one seated on it. Earth and heaven had fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. I also saw the dead, the great and the small, standing before the throne, and books were open. Another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works by what was written in the books. Then the sea gave up its dead, and death and Hades gave up their dead. All were judged according to their works. Death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire." This is the second death, the lake of fire. "And anyone not found written in the books of life was thrown into the lake of fire." Our God's great love for humanity has pushed him to this extreme with a final act of righteous judgment. And so all the people will have a definite opportunity to repent and be saved. It's not the God of love and mercy who will condemn anyone to the lake of fire. Quite the opposite. It is the short-sighted choice that each person has made for themselves, and for that self-condemnation. For those who choose to remain orphans, they have no excuse. The verse ends this section with the Hebrew word Selah. You may recall from previous studies in Psalms that the musical pause Selah gives us an opportunity to stop and reflect on all that we have read thus far.